Welcome back to the Suit and Scrubs podcast, where business meets bedside. I'm Dan Haggerty, the guy in the suit, joined by three of the best home health PTs out there, Brendan Kirby, Lisa Thompson, and Dan Catuccio. Before we dive in, check out karenmotion.co for tools, tips, and products for anyone in home health. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen to us. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell so you never miss an episode. All right, let's dive in. When you started your career in home health, you probably didn't imagine it could lead to early retirement or generational wealth. But this week's guest, Josh Tennant, proves it's possible. He shares how he's turned his therapy income into seven-figure wealth through smart saving, disciplined investing, and a deep dive into Bitcoin. Tune in for a 30-minute masterclass in personal finance and mindset, tailor-made for therapists who want to build a more secure future. All right, welcome to the inaugural episode of Season 2. Dan Haggerty here with Dan and Lisa. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you all?
Doing great.
It was 80 degrees all week, and it's plummeting tomorrow to like the 60s, or no, 50s in Connecticut. We were like riding like a beautiful wave, so I'm getting ready for that.
Nice.
You're going to
We're
have
like
actual
high
fall
80s,
come.
low 90s.
You're like high 80s, low 90s, like the whole like winter, aren't you? Oh my gosh. Are you? No.
Sometimes, yeah.
Really?
We had
Oh
an
my
85-degree Christmas Eve a couple years ago. We went swimming.
I'm coming out there in January then.
Yeah, it's great out there.
That's the respite from 110 degrees all summer long, I guess.
That's
Yeah.
for real. That's true.
Well, I'm super excited because number one, we're kicking off Season 2. Whoever thought there would be a Season 2, it's amazing. I'm excited that there was a Season 1. So we've come so far, 25 episodes, kicking off the second round. And today's is all about the financial piece of things. Mm-hmm. And so we're excited to introduce our home health PT friend, Josh Tennant, who's going to be talking a little bit about how to help the home health community invest wisely. So Josh, welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
You're here, man.
Glad to have you. So we've worked together a little bit. So you've done a lot of things in your career. So why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah. So prior to meeting Dan, I've been a PT now for about 18 years. And most of the settings I've worked in pretty heavily in the home health, which is how I met with Dan. About 15 years in home health, and then I had my own business subcontracting for about 12 years. But now I'm currently doing acute care. Been in the SNF settings before, a little bit of outpatient, and then with Dan, the corporate side of things, and then just ultimately missed patient care. So moved down here in North Carolina and got a job at a hospital. So very content, very happy, very flexible with my schedule. The switch from home health, and we all know the grind. When you get home, you have to call your patients, you got to finish your paperwork, submit everything, correct charts if you have some sent back to you. Very nice being able to come home and just be done and not have that. It's kind of I almost feel guilty when I'm home and I don't have anything to do other than just, spend time with the kids and fix dinner. But it's been a nice pivot for me.
So you're in acute care, Josh? In a hospital?
Yeah,
Nice.
I'm in the hospital setting. So
all right. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool that you get home and you feel like you're done. That is one thing where, oh man, me and Lisa and I, we kind of preach like doing our best to be as efficient in charting as possible so we walk in the door with stuff done. But yeah, I mean, inevitably, I just made some phone calls, a couple hours ago, trying to tie up loose ends and a little bit stressed out about like my 9 o'clock canceling this and that. So yeah, that's nice to hear that you found a good balance.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, for sure. The grind is real in home health. That's for sure.
Yeah. Grind? What are you talking? There's no grind in home health, right, Lisa? No.
But the flexibility is fantastic too. Being able to make your own schedule is something I definitely miss.
Yeah. Well, no doubt. I mean, bottom line is this: you have found a good balance, which is great. But there's always the ebb and flow and the perks, the pluses and minuses of every job setting. But I'm glad that you found something that's worked. Well, maybe I can start off with a couple of, just thoughts right off the bat. I'm excited for what you're about to present to us. And just a little bit of a quick background for me. So when I graduated from college, so my dad was a teacher, and with teaching comes a pension, right? And so nothing against the way that my dad prepared me, but I honestly and truly didn't have an idea of where to start. And so I did a lot of reading of my own books. And I remember in the back of my head, we had a financial presentation. It was like a 1-hour financial presentation to all the PTs, our last year of school. And it was, if you get nothing else out of this presentation, I want you to max out your Roth IRAs starting now. And I'll never forget that, because at the age of 23, that's what I started. So I'm 45 now. I've been doing it for 22 years. And guess what? My wife has too. So that's been just a tremendous start. But with that, and I'm huge into financial freedom and the idea of early retirement, because I feel like this thought process is, okay, well, I guess you're supposed to work up until the age of 65 when Social Security kicks in, and then from there you join all these groups on Facebook like FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early, all this stuff, and you realize, okay, there are methods out there. So I would love to hear what you would, I guess, an intro to what you've been doing and what's exciting you about it, and a couple of the takeaways that you could teach us.
Yeah.
Kind of a broad question, but yeah, maybe start off with.
Tell us everything you know.
Yeah.
No, I mean, first, Dan, I'll applaud you for having that, that drive to want to educate yourself and start investing early. I'm very similar to you, got involved very much into like Roth IRA, traditional IRA, and maxing out 401k, and trying to find a way to retire early as well. Unfortunately, I feel like it's an area that we are not really taught, not just therapists, but really everyone. Thinking back to high school economics, they don't really teach you some of the everyday life experience things that people have to deal with. And, ultimately for me, I've found that I need to find a way out, as far as like, not just investing in Roth, but like, let me find the fastest horse in the race that outpaces everything else as far as returns yearly. So that's kind of what got me to the point where I am now, with some of my investments and my approach to things. But before we get into like specifics of what I invest in, I think it's so important that, and I'll say this several times tonight, education is everything. I think people in general they're overworked, they're underpaid in my opinion. And I think many people have spouses at home and they yet still can't make ends meet. And, or maybe they're just getting by. They don't have a lot of extra to put into saving because the cost of everything is going up. So I think people have that hunch. They just don't really have their finger quite on the pulse yet, in my opinion. And I'm generally speaking, it sounds like, Dan, if you've done your research, you probably have a better hunch than most. But, I really just, I'm a therapist at heart. I know how therapists think. I know how we feel. I know how hard we work. I know everything we give to our patients. And in my career, I've found all my coworkers that I speak to and develop relationships with, it's a common theme that, they're delaying having kids, or they're delaying getting their second home because they've outgrown their first one, because financially they just can't stay ahead. And to your point, trying to retire early is becoming more and more difficult, because unless you started at 22, 25, 26, you're kind of behind the 8 ball in some ways. So I think it's important to get started early, like you said, but also to allocate appropriately.
Right.
I guess I would have a question, because who would be kind of your target audience, right? Because you have people like Dan who kind of already have some skin in the game, right? Who could be able to learn from you, educate, everything like that. And then you have potentially people like myself who have zero knowledge on all of this. Now, I'm lucky that I have a husband that manage all of the finances, and I'm set my 401k and my Roth IRA, and all of my investments are doing very, very, very well, right? So I'm pretty much almost set for life. But if I didn't have that, where would you recommend you start?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's probably different for everyone. I would say the most important place to start would be to educate yourselves on how the current monetary system works in our country, because I think the problem truly is like fractional reserve banking, how banks are lending money that isn't really there. The Federal Reserve is inflating our money supply so much that that's the reason why it's hard for people to afford things, because years go by and that number goes higher and higher and higher. If we get a 3% raise, we're celebrating that, but really our money is being debased by 6 to 8%. So that's just unsustainable. And that's why people feel that squeeze, because even though they're getting that raise, they're just turning right around and dumping that into more expensive groceries, or fuel is up, or whatever it may be. So I think that's a really good place to start for people. And then once they understand the problem, then I think the natural next question, if you're critically thinking, would be, okay, well then what's the solution? What are some solutions that there are? Our money is very not hard. So hard money is something that is difficult to find or have. Like gold traditionally was the hardest money that the world has ever seen, really, because it was scarce. And then the Federal Reserve took the gold and started issuing currency, which is not hard at all. So that's why it inflates. So I think if you can find things that beat that inflation rate, that's a really good place to start. So if your hurdle rate, let's be conservative and say 6%, it's probably a little bit higher, but you want to find something that is traditionally returning you higher than that 6%, so you're not just treading water with inflation. So it's a great question, because this is very overwhelming for people. We're therapists. We think like therapists. We don't really have that financial background. We have families. We have full-time jobs. We have paperwork when we get home and things like that. We don't have a whole lot of time to educate ourselves. But I strongly recommend it, because we work hard to have our income. I think we should preserve that for years to come.
So how did you educate yourself? And as you were educating yourself, what did you find?
Yeah, so I actually worked backwards a little bit. I mean, I educated myself a little bit about just the investment side of it, but I didn't identify the problem of why our money is broken, essentially. I luckily had a friend that got me into Bitcoin, so I dove headfirst into that rabbit hole and just started eating up as much information as I could. Listening, I was doing home health, so instead of listening to music or making phone calls between patients, I was just listening to podcasts almost religiously. And then, I would get home and I would watch some YouTube videos, and I bought a few books. And so once I learned about Bitcoin, it's just like this light came on for me, and my knowledge just expanded exponentially after that. Because I had that hunger to learn more.
Maybe what I'd love to, so for the lay person, myself included, when it comes to Bitcoin, right? So, I've heard about it, and my first reaction has always been, oh my gosh, it sounds a little bit scary because of the instability that I've heard about. I've heard of people, killing it and then losing it all, so there's a lot of, but I think there's a lot of false information that we hear out there based on like the volatility, but also just the lack of knowledge. So I'd love to hear a little bit about like what you have seen as these like global, put it this way: why crypto over your traditional, U.S. dollar?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is very complex. It's it's a topic that is not well understood by traditional media, and it's not. It's young, so it's a currency that's young and in the infancy, but it's the only one that's had staying power. So there is a lot of FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt around Bitcoin because of false information that's out there. And I would say that to describe it in just basic terms, it's decentralized. So there's no government, company, individual who's manipulating anything about it. So that already makes it pure. It's it's run by a public ledger system. So imagine like nodes or computers that are, everyone can have one if they want to, and they verify transactions, how much someone has, how much they don't have. So everything's out there in the open. But it's also, it can't be counterproofed or counterfeit. It's scarce. It's the only asset that we've ever had that is absolutely scarce. There's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever exist, and that's the fixed supply. Without getting too technical in the details, it's basically mined from computers every 10 minutes. One computer wins that award, and then it's on to the next. So it's scarce, it's decentralized, and it's a pure monetary public currency that we have. And that's, again, just keeping it as basic as I can because it is pretty complex. But.
And how would you, I guess my next follow-up question would be, how would you find, because obviously you're passionate about it, which tells me you must be seeing a benefit from investing in crypto, versus in a more traditional route, as far as return on investment. So are you able to talk for the people that you study and yourself, are you able to see, hey, the past 2 years of investing, I have seen a, whatever it is, 26% return on investment compared to the S&P 500, which did like 13 to 14%. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to compare. So first, and not to pick on you again, but there's a common misconception of crypto and Bitcoin, and unfortunately, Bitcoin is lumped into crypto, and crypto has had a lot of scams. They aren't decentralized, so they have central authorities that are like a pump and dump scheme, where they launch. I mean, even Trump did this. He launched Trump coin and then wrote it up, and then he sold it, made billions, and then people are left holding the bag. So I do want to differentiate the two. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, but it's different because it's the only decentralized.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate you differentiating that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I should probably have said this in the beginning. This is not financial advice. This is just my opinion. But I don't invest into any other cryptocurrencies other than Bitcoin because of what I know about it. I don't know a lot about the other cryptocurrencies. Just generally speaking, they seem a little more risky. But to answer your question about percent, traditionally over the last 10 years, Bitcoin has averaged 60% CAGR rate growth every year. So that's annualized. So obviously we all know, you mentioned it already, that it's very volatile. It's very up and down. It can have, it can go up 160% one year and then go down 75% the next. So it is volatile. This is not like a short-term day trade that you really want to mess with, especially if you know what you hold, which is a scarce, asset. So I try to explain it as, imagine if you could buy a city block in Manhattan in 1800. you would absolutely gobble as much of that up as you can if you knew what it was going to be worth down the road. So that's an extreme example, but I say that because if something is scarce and desirable and people will always want it, you want to hold for long term. But yeah, you have to be able to stomach the ups and downs. I've bought it. I think I started buying it about 5 years ago, and it was about $35,000 per Bitcoin. It's about 122, I think, 122,000. But I've seen it when it was 16, 17,000. So as long as you have that conviction to never really sell it until, I try to tell like my family and loved ones and friends if they're interested, this is at least a 5-year hold, preferably a 10-year hold. And I would almost bet anything if you held that long and saw what returns you potentially could have, you probably would just not sell because you realize what you have.
So, well, I think that. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
I was going to say that was kind of my question of how are you investing in Bitcoin, right? Are you just you're just kind of keeping on putting money in as it goes, or you're kind of doing a lump sum and then waiting it out? Because like I random like Venmo opened up crypto and Bitcoin, and I put in like $20 and I just checked my thing. I'm like, I have a 305% return on my Bitcoin. Like, I wish I could have put in, thousands of dollars. That would have been nice. But if you kind of put it in, think about it. I had this huge return. But is that how you're like, what would you suggest to someone who might look into investing in Bitcoin? Is it just investing and then kind of forgetting about it, or you're kind of trying to watch it and buy the lows and dump the highs or something?
It's a good question. I think I do both. If I have extra cash on the side and it dips, but I watch it closely, right? So I think for most people the answer would be almost like a set and forget type thing. I also buy weekly, so every week on like a Monday at 7:15 or whatever, it's called dollar cost averaging, and essentially think of that as like a savings. So for me personally, I'd rather put my money into a savings that is going to go up 60% a year versus my savings account from my bank that might offer me 0.1%. So I think it's probably easier for people just to your point, Lisa, just buy it weekly or monthly or daily or however they want to do it, just almost set and forget. And then they come back to it and they see what it's not worth. So there's several different ways you can buy. You can buy on Venmo, you can buy on Cash App. There's several different apps that are Bitcoin only. Probably the best piece of advice I could say to people who start buying, significant amount of Bitcoin would be to self-custody your Bitcoin. So that is, don't leave it on an exchange, because if your account gets hacked, your Bitcoin's gone. It's not like it's FDIC insured and the exchange has to pay you. So basically, a hardware wallet or like a USB drive is how you would store your Bitcoin, and that way it's off the exchange. It's in cold storage. You basically write down a list of 24 words. That's your password for your keys for your Bitcoin. You safeguard that with everything you have, because if you lose your hardware wallet or if it gets broken, stolen, damaged, if you have your words in your safe somewhere where no one else knows about, that you can still recover your Bitcoin, because there are stories out there where people have not safeguarded their phrase, their passwords, and they've unfortunately gotten lost a lot of money. I've known some people who have lost some. So,
isn't there a guy that he had all of it stored on his laptop and he accidentally threw his computer away, and he's been trying to go through this dump in England for like 5 years?
That story.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I would be sick to my stomach. Just have to start all over. But
So I experimented once, and it was a combination of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And I appreciate you clarifying, because the fact that you mentioned it's kind of like gold, it's scarce. There's a fixed number, there's a fixed supply, which obviously creates the ability for this to people can't release more of it, which dilutes the price. But I had used Coinbase, which was an app, and then I'm looking at the price of this over the years, and I feel like I bought it like 60,000, and then it went down to 30 over the course of a year. And I was like, I got to get out of this. And so I sold it, and now I see it's gone up to 120. So that makes me feel great. So you're saying don't use one of these apps like Coinbase. You're saying to somehow buy it and store it on a drive.
Well, you have to buy it through an app. So Coinbase, you can buy it. When I first started buying Bitcoin, I used Coinbase as well. But then you take it from the app onto your hardware wallet. So it takes it off of the exchange, because you can't, the hardware wallet is your key to your Bitcoin. But it just gets it off of the exchange. So it's not at risk of, a scammer or someone hacking you.
Gotcha.
So the exchanges are the on-ramps essentially to get Bitcoin. But then once you have, a hardware wallet's like $50. Once you have a considerable amount of Bitcoin that you're worried about losing, let's say you have $1,000 worth, then you might want to invest in a hardware wallet, especially, $1,000 worth today. Bitcoin goes to $5 million a coin one day. That's significant improvement in how much you have. So I strongly recommend, once you get to a limit where if you lost that money, you would be kind of sick to your stomach, probably should go ahead and get a hardware wallet.
So go ahead, Dan.
All I was going to say is, I think one of the key takeaways is, for sure, you hear about Bitcoin, you hear about other types of currency and other cryptocurrency, but you hear about Bitcoin and you think, yes, there's volatility, but there's also volatility in the stock market. And so just one very quick story. Back when I didn't know what I was doing, I was day trading and not knowing what I was doing while reading books. And the crash of 2008 happened, and I panicked. And I sold some stuff at the very low, which is the exact opposite of what you're supposed to do. And there I was, 26 years old, and it ended up being quite a low point in my life because I just effed up, and I did it. And my wife, thank God, was with me throughout and forgave me, because I was day trading, and thank God. So then, I purchased more as it came up, which was, better than nothing, and let it ride for years, and finally broke even. And then, But, had I done the smart thing at the age of 26, you cannot go into stock market investing, mutual fund investing, Roth IRA, whatever, or Bitcoin, thinking, okay, I'm going to try to quadruple my money in 1 year because that sounds realistic and reasonable. Listen, you got to be smart, right?
Yep, absolutely. And, I think too, I think everyone learns some of these lessons, unfortunately, the hard way. I have a lesson as well. I got into as soon as I got into Bitcoin, I thought, well, what's the next Bitcoin? So I got into a couple other cryptocurrencies, and lost. I lost basically most of it. So, those lessons, I think, they're painful, but they're also useful if you take away from it kind of the mistakes that were made, and then you vow to never do it again. So
exactly.
So just putting a little bit of a bow around the therapist piece of this, because we know that a lot of listeners might be 1099s that don't have a 401k or 401k match, and then others may be W-2, but they but they may or may not have a match. So if I'm out there and am a 1099, I'm not, nothing's getting set aside automatically. So these are the types of things I need to be thinking about as part of a balanced portfolio. Or are you like 100% Bitcoin with your finances, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, I think it's really up to the person, their risk tolerance. I think it all again comes down to education. I think as I first started out, Bitcoin was maybe 15% of my portfolio, and then the more I learned, the more I just realized this is the fastest horse in the race, in my opinion. And so that number climbed. So I think currently it's about 75% of my portfolio. I also have Roth IRAs and such that, which by the way, I think most people who, let's say you have a 1099 therapist who maybe doesn't have a 401k at work, I would encourage to open a Roth IRA. And then even within that Roth IRA, you can start buying Bitcoin ETFs. So BlackRock has one, Fidelity has one. There's also a stock that I heavily invest in. It's a company that owns almost 700,000 Bitcoin, which is more than 3% of all the Bitcoin that will ever exist, which is more than the United States and China have combined. So my hope with that is that, because they have so much Bitcoin, that they will continue to outperform Bitcoin. So there are tools now. I think Wall Street is warming up to Bitcoin as an investment tool, and there are definitely some avenues that people can get some Bitcoin exposure within, Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, brokers accounts, things like that. But I think I don't want to answer that question for people individually. It's worked out for me, but I think you have to kind of do some soul searching, educate yourself, and then figure out what your risk tolerance is. I think if you have a long enough time horizon, you fully educate yourself. I'm pretty confident that most people eventually would get to a point where 25, 30, 45% Bitcoin allocation is not out of reach in the near future. I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of years. I think there's still a learning curve that needs to kind of occur for people. But I think with time, as it matures as an asset class, those numbers will go up.
So it sounds like you've diversified your Bitcoin with Bitcoin funds.
Basically, yeah. And I think too, the cool thing that I can speak of personally now is I never want to sell my Bitcoin, but there are ways that you can basically post it as collateral to take a loan, just like you would your home. So if you want to take a HELOC of your home, let's say you have your home is worth $500,000. You've paid it down to 300, so you have $200,000 of equity that's just sitting there that you could borrow against and buy another home. You could buy Bitcoin, gold, whatever you want. You could buy a boat if you want to. But I basically have gotten to the point now where I take a sizable chunk of my Bitcoin. For me personally, I don't want to post more than 20% because I want to buffer for if there is that volatility of a drawdown. So if it drops 80% or more, then I could get in trouble unless I put more Bitcoin up. So 20% is like a pretty conservative, but just where I'm at. But basically what I'm doing now currently, and this has afforded me to, I'm working 3 days a week instead of 5 now, being more home with the kids and enjoying the beach, things like that. By posting up Bitcoin as collateral, I can then take a loan out and it's not income, so it's not taxed. And basically, as Bitcoin goes up in value, after a year, that loan term is due. If Bitcoin's up, let's say double, then I can just roll that loan over again to 20%. So I know we're getting kind of high up with the knowledge and kind of tools that are out there, but it does basically the story for me is that it's given me an opportunity to use my Bitcoin without selling it. And as it appreciates in value, the play for me is, if the interest rate on my loan is, let's say 10%, but Bitcoin's going up, 50, 40%, then the difference is kind of my buffer, because the next year it's appreciated that much more. I pay off the interest with the next loan that I take out, if that makes sense.
Yeah, becomes almost can become your side job almost, based on the return that you're getting. So if therapists want to learn more about some of this, are you out there helping folks, or do you have resources you recommend?
Yeah, both really. And I can, Dan, when we get off this call, I can provide you a list of some books, some podcasts, some people on YouTube that I've followed that have kind of given me a bunch of information and knowledge. But even me personally, this is something that, I'm obviously passionate about Bitcoin now, because it's personally changed my life and opened up avenues for my family and for my professional career as well. But I just, have a place in my heart for therapists, because we're hard workers. We're dedicated to our patients. We deserve to be able to go home and, love our families, upgrade our home, have more kids if we want. So I want to make myself available to help, therapists and other healthcare workers, just to open eyes on again, what the problem is, why it's hard for people to get ahead and stay ahead, and maybe some solutions that they might want to look into and make those decisions for themselves.
Josh, are you doing any of this on social media at all? Like, are you like looking to speak with an audience like on social media about this? Are you educating, or marketing yourself for that type of education? I'm just curious, because I honestly don't know.
Yeah, not yet. This is actually my first podcast. Dan was my first call.
Sweet.
And then I also have a financial advisor who is Bitcoin focused, that's on some podcasts, pretty big podcasts, and does a bunch of Bitcoin conferences and such. He actually invited me one to Denver next week, a couple of weeks from now. Unfortunately, I won't be able to go with the baby at home, but I hope to kind of get out there and network a little bit more, and kind of just be more, face to face with people, and hope to build connections. And then I really see myself doing this in, the next few years, and just kind of ramping that up, because it is something I'm passionate about, for sure.
Cool.
That's great. Cool. Well, we'll take all these resources and make them available to everybody. And then obviously, Josh, I think it's great that you're offering up, especially having that perspective and background, and been in the trenches, and knowing, the life and the income and the typical investment, sophistication or lack of sophistication, or the opportunities that are available out there. You've lived it yourself. So I think that will be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, happy to help.
And thanks for joining us on the podcast today. I think what you provided has been probably invaluable for a lot of folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was good to meet with you guys.
Good to meet you.
Well, be sure to check the show notes for all the information that we talked about today, and check out the Care in Motion website, careinmotion.co. And follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and also Lisa with the Home Health Chronicles, and Dan's on Facebook and Instagram as well. And until next week, we will see you guys soon.
See you guys.
Have a good one.